Legs. How are you, sir?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you doing? Happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays. This is it's so great to have you doing this with me. Such an honor. You are a true pioneer of the punk rock movement, so to speak. You've been there since the beginning.
What do you do, Legs?
Well, I work as resident punk.
What does that involve?
I usually just hang out and drink a lot and meet famous people and do interviews.
You gave the genre its name, punk rock, essentially.
Well, it had been used. Lenny Kaye had used it, and Greg Shaw had used it, and Grail Marcus had used it. A bunch of people had used it, but it wasn't unified under. It wasn't kind of codified under this one scene, where John Holmstrom, who was the editor and genius behind punk, said, I want to call it Teenage News, which I thought was a stupid idea, you know? Okay, it just sounded so lame, but what I didn't know was that it was from an unreleased New York Dolls record.
We're gonna wrap it up with this song that's an anthem for a generation, and I'm not quite sure what generation, but it's called the Teenage News.
Right.
And I said, why don't we call it punk? But see, I didn't read the music rags at all. John read them all, or John read Lester and all these people. And I was basically a skinny little punk, you know. That's what people would call me all my life. Plus, it's what they called the bad guy on TV. They couldn't say, you know, you goddamn blah 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 blah
Right.
blah blah. You know, so they came up with, you dirty punk, you're going down forever. You'll be in jail for the rest of your life.
Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
They still do. They still use it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely stood the test of time. I don't know if Teenage News would have had the same impact, even though, like I said, it was a New York Dolls song. But it became a legendary magazine out there on the scene. Informed so many people about the punk, what was going on with the bands, because they weren't getting that stuff mainstream back then.
No, well, there were, and mainstream media really put punk down. You know, they didn't try to understand it, or, you know, it was just, there were, it was so limited. There was no internet. There were the 3 networks and a few local news channels that loved. I mean, if they needed to do an anti-story on something, they would choose punk.
What is punk? Why is it different than the Woodstock generation or beatniks, or is it?
Well, I think it's different because it has no social value.
Right.
You know, come and interview a bunch of idiots, you know, and say, you want your, I mean, there was an episode of Quincy where they go and someone I think died in the mosh pit, you know, because they were, you know, and Quincy got incensed and said, we have to stop this, you know. You know.
And she finds her daughter burning cigarette holes in her arm, shredding her closed bits, taking pills, and locking herself in a room listening to that violence-oriented punk rock music.
No way out of the rain. No shortcuts, baby, no fast lane.
Yeah, back in the day, punk rock was definitely scary in a way. I was a kid. I guess turned 50. So, you know, when this whole thing started, it was pretty much, I was a little kid, and it was scary in the sense that it was real. It was gritty. It was in the streets, and you know, being the part. Is that what you would say defined punk rock back then? Was this rebellious, gritty street?
I thought it was a kind of a joke, you know. I was so skinny and could never fight. I think I got into 2 fights with Holmstrom, not with him, but with,
right.
You know, and someone punched me and I went down and John was saying, get up. And I go, why? He's just going to punch me again. I'm just going to go down again, you know? So, you know, I was not a tough guy at all, you know, never was, you know. make love, not war. But I was a lover, not a fighter. But and that's where the term legs came from, and John said, and you can wrestle Handsome Dick Manitoba, the dictators, and we'll have a wrestling contest, and we'll call you Muscles McNeil. I said, no, you're not going to call him. That's And he went through, Arms McNeil, and then he said Legs McNeil, and I thought that because I was born with one leg longer than the other, and they did an operation where they cut 2 inches off my femur, and I couldn't walk for a year. And,
wow.
And so I thought legs. Oh, okay, it'll be legs. I like legs. And I always liked gangster movies and kind of film noir and pulp.
Yes. Yeah.
Pulp magazines and you dirty rat and stuff like that.
Come out and take it, you dirty yellow-bellied rat, or I'll give it to you through the door.
Right on. And also, nobody ever forgets a guy named Legs. Being a part of the punk rock from the beginning, and you watched it evolve, and it crossed over into different genres. You got your hardcore and pop punk and all stuff. But ultimately, what's your opinion on the evolution of punk rock? What it is today? Are you happy with it? Is it what you expected would be?
I'm happy that it keeps evolving. Rock and roll is sort of dying out right now. So, which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
Because kids would rather listen to synth or whatever. But I think there's an opportunity for it to reemerge if a good enough band can capture the imagination of the world like Nirvana did or any of those. But it wasn't up to me to like it. I was not a big fan of hardcore, but I was happy that it seemed like it kept evolving.
Right.
I wear rat shoes. I pay rat stews. I make rat balls.
It was that you could be anything or do anything you wanted. You could reinvent yourself in any way that you were capable of, which is what the design was. It was because at that time there was only 2 ways to be: a hippie or a jock,
right,
or a nerd. So basically 3. So it was so limiting,
right,
the possibilities. And punk was to say, hey, because most people I've talked to throughout the years, and the fans of Please Kill Me, say I felt like such an outsider. I didn't relate to anybody, and then I put on an Iggy record, or I put on a Velvet Underground record, or put on a Patti Smith record, and I suddenly felt, I found my place, and I relate to this, It gave you an opportunity to find friends and people, like-minded people, and so you could form your own community, which is what makes me the happiest about this, is that people didn't commit suicide, and they committed suicide slowly through punk, but
yeah.
But if a lot of these school shooters who probably feel the same way had discovered, the Ramones or Iggy or whatever, the Dead Boys, they probably wouldn't have shot all these kids,
Yeah, because you're able to get that angst out of your system, or get it out, whether it's at home just rocking out, or even in a mosh pit, or at the clubs, or whatever. So yeah, I think I always say, I feel like punk rock is they're truth tellers in a way, and also it is good for those type of kids to find an outlet, in the music.